Welcome back, everybody. It seems like every day we here at Just the News are uncovering more and more evidence of corruption and potential wrongdoing from our very own government agencies, especially when it comes to the targeting of President Trump and, in conjunction, the overlooking of potential crimes by those aligned against the president. So whether it comes to the IRS criminal probes that John has been reporting on about the Clinton Foundation that was just suddenly stopped, or the leaking of classified intel by the FBI, the question remains, how did any of this happen in the first place? How did we get to this point? So joining us now to talk about that is former FBI agent as well as a former Navy SEAL and Air Marshal Jonathan Gilliam. Jonathan, welcome back.
Good to be with you all. And thank you for saying former, because I get so much pressure from guys for saying I'm retired from the SEAL teams. They don't like that. I don't like it either. So thank you for saying that. I appreciate it.
Well, Jonathan, I'm glad your name is Jonathan and not James, because it feels like, not to besmirch anyone named James out there, you've got James Comey, James Baker, James Rubicki, all of these Jameses out there who are involved in this scandal that John is talking about from your time at the FBI. When you look at something like this, where the director, his chief of staff, his chief counsel, they are all embroiled in this, yet one is saying, well, he told me, and he told me, and he said, she said, how do you at the end of the day finally find out who is ultimately culpable?
Well, to the side of all the incredible information that John is bringing to the front, right? I have to say that from an FBI investigator standpoint, I just see this investigation unfolding in a different structure than it would be if you and I were the ones committing the crimes, which is further evidence of a two-tier justice system. All of these things that are not just being leaked, but are being reported by Kash Patel, reported by Pam Bondi. Why are these things occurring? Because I can't make sense of this from an investigative standpoint, the way it's being carried out. I can look at what Comey and those individuals did from an investigative standpoint and say, as the information comes out, there is clear evidence that crimes are being committed. That is evident, and especially the more that John puts out there, the more we see, the more Kash and Pam Bondi and everybody else puts out there, the more we see that this is a viable case. So what I cannot understand is, why is this being pushed out into the media? Why isn't this case from the very beginning been held close to the vest? They could have just told the American people, we are working on something that's very big, and then work this like any other case where they have information protection, where they work up and down, not just up to try to get the biggest fish, but to get all the players, because every single person that has been in the FBI or the DOJ or government in general that cooperated with these corruptions or these criminal actions, they're all guilty. And so I think as I go along and I see all these things, I'm torn, because I'm looking at it saying, man, this is incredible. The very people that should have been targeted for criminal behavior are now getting targeted. But on the other hand, from an investigative standpoint, I keep stepping back and saying, how can you continue to give the people that are the criminals all the evidence that you have before a case ever comes before a court? That gives them the ability to maneuver, get rid of information. And we have to remember, some of these people are still in the Bureau, most likely, that were used and cooperated, and in the DOJ.
Yeah, that's a great thing. So let me ask you, you said something pretty profound. You think there's a pretty solid criminal case here, and there's statutes of limitations that go all around, but willful knowing leaking of national security information that harms the national interest is a 10-year statute. So if they can prove this leak, they still have a statute. The rest of it looks like they're building a conspiracy case, which is this was a wash, rinse, repeat cycle of protecting Democrats and harming Republicans, violating civil liberties. Do you feel pretty confident that a good prosecutor with a good FBI team and a good strike force probably could charge a lot of people with the body of evidence we now know about?
I have no doubt in that, because I think also what we have to start looking at is things like subversion. Subversion, like treason and insurrection, these are all criminal actions that there's law for. But nobody, especially in the higher parts of government, are ever charged with these things. And when you look at those types of crimes, okay, maybe they leaked this information, but was their motive and intent to subvert the government of the United States or a standing president or a president that was coming in to office? If that's the case, then the statute of limitations goes out the door. And that's why I believe it's important for them to go forward on a RICO case, because as they link all of these individuals and they can show whether the statute of limitations for those particular crimes have gone, right? Let's say they've passed, but they can show that 2 or more people were involved in these crimes for the purpose of furthering their criminal enterprise. That's a RICO charge. And so when you can show all these people were doing this and the purpose for which they were doing it, if that leads to things like treason, insurrection, subversion, then we are in territory we've never been before, and the statute of limitations, I don't believe will apply, because it supersedes what the actual crime was, and it goes over to the furtherance of a criminal enterprise for the purpose of subversion or treason or so on and so forth. So there's a greater crime that's being committed that all of these individual crimes were being used for. And I think that is where we need to get to, whether we will or not, because of the way the case is being carried out in media and on television for everybody to see. That's a whole nother story, because they're creating a mountain for themselves. The prosecution is creating a mountain that they have to climb that they wouldn't otherwise have to climb. So that's where I think, and let me say one other thing. In order to take those small crimes and show that they were being used for the purpose of things like subversion or insurrection or treason, that is where individuals involved, if they see the direction that the prosecution is going, they can then maneuver their testimony. They can maneuver evidence. Yeah. They've shown us that they're willing to destroy evidence or try in certain circumstances. So that's where my fear comes, is that as this is being played out, then the potential is that they will maneuver to show other than all of these things were being used to further a criminal enterprise.
That's a great point, Jonathan.
Jonathan, before we let you go on a similar topic, a lot of people would argue that one of the symptoms of a morbidly obese government is corruption. And you look at the case of ODNI under Tulsi Gabbard, and she's giving it an Ozempic shot, and as a result, it's going to go down a few dress sizes. Does that help send a message to those who would politicize an agency like National Intelligence, the FBI, a number of different agencies? Does that send a message that we're going to shrink this, and so if you are doing any shenanigans, there's going to be more oversight because there are fewer of you?
Well, I absolutely believe that in the future it will. I think if they show that, back in the day when there were snake oil salesmen, or even now, if you have, since we're talking about the Ozempic example, let's say you have a doctor that's telling people that if he gives them this injection, it'll cure their cancer, but it's an actual lie, and it kills a lot of people because they didn't get the other treatment, right? Once you show that doctor going to jail for the rest of his life, it's going to deter other evil people with medical degrees that might do the same thing. And I think in this case, the more that they can publicly show, this is where I do agree with the public show, is they can show that there is no two-tier justice system, that they are going to start going after people in government that use their official position to do things against them. I think that will make a big difference in the future.
Jonathan, real quick, I just want to ask one little quick thing. You served for a long time, both in the military, Navy SEAL, the FBI. What is the legacy of the Comey era of the FBI and our justice system?
It's a disaster. But I'll tell you, it didn't start with Comey. I believe it started with Mueller, because Mueller is the one that brought in the new dialogue in 2008 and actually said, we are going to change the FBI from the premier law enforcement to the premier domestic intelligence agency. They told us that in training, and I believe that's what they did. And they used that intelligence to go after politicians and leaders and people that they don't like.
Wow. Yeah. Powerful.
I think you're right, though. You make them walk the plank, and other people are going to think twice before they do it again. Jonathan Gilliam.
Let me say this one other thing. The thing about Comey that really goes against him, nobody liked Mueller. And when Comey came in, everybody thought he was the savior for the Bureau. And it turns out he's as far left as you can go and just as evil as anyone else who's ever been in that position.
Yeah, he was the Eagle Scout, remember? Everybody thought he was just an old shucks Eagle Scout.
Calling.
Jonathan Gilliam, former FBI agent, Navy SEAL, Air Marshal, thanks so much for being with us tonight.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, everybody, up next, we're going to examine why so many of these IRS investigations seem to be getting shut down, or they did at one time. We'll be back on the other side.
Hey, America, the digital dollar is coming, and it's moving faster than most Americans realize. Right now, 134 countries covering 98% of global GDP are developing programmable digital currencies. These aren't just new forms of money. They're built to track everything you do and control how you spend it. China already has 260 million people using their version, which can expire if it's not spent in time. This isn't innovation. It's the end of financial privacy. According to the Bank for International Settlements, these digital currencies will allow governments to monitor every single transaction in real time, and the IMF has confirmed they can be programmed to limit what people can buy and how their money's used. That's why our friends at American Alternative Assets created an urgent new guide. It's called The Digital Dollar Trap: How CBDCs Threaten Your Financial Freedom. It lays out 7 ways these currencies could strip away your freedom and explains why precious metals may be your best choice to opt out before it's too late. Call 855-GOLD-340 or visit johnlikesgold.com to get your free guide. That's 855-465-3340 or visit my site, johnlikesgold.com. Now protect your money before surveillance becomes total and escape is no longer an option.